Welcome, Flyers nitty gritty fans, to the Always Level Up podcast with your host, Yariv, Wolok, and I am very excited to announce new guest to the show because I only have one episode for each person so far. But former Flyers equipment manager, head equipment manager, Phantoms equipment manager, I believe Florida Panthers as well, former All-Star, former world champion, silver medal, and a Calder Cup as well in your history, and current entrepreneur on several different levels. Derek Settlemyre, D Nasty. How you doing, buddy? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on, man. I'm pretty excited to tell your story because I think you have a very unique one. And I would say in some ways you have a childhood dream type of lifestyle, and I think you might acknowledge that yourself. And I want to go through it. And I want to start early. So I do want to start like pretty early in your life. When you were young as a kid, I know you started kind of being around the Flyers at a young age. Obviously, your dad was involved in that situation. But let's start even earlier. When you were a kid, did you have a dream of being an equipment manager, or what was your kind of dream job at, growing up as a young boy?
I loved what my dad did. I grew up in North Carolina, but I was up in this area a lot, obviously, to visit him. But I was, we didn't have hockey there like it is now. Like, I would have played hockey if it was offered because I loved hockey. But believe it or not, 5'8", I was a basketball player. Was able to play college basketball, which was great. And I played college soccer as well. But those were kind of my, I always thought I was going to play for Wake Forest University and then play in the NBA. But
hey, some guys were able to do it.
It did. Once I was old enough and realized that was not going to happen. I probably around my junior year of college, I started really thinking about maybe trying to get into hockey and the equipment side of things. I was wanting to be a basketball coach. And then I realized what I was going to have to do as far as I was going to have to stay there a couple more years, which I didn't mind school. I loved school, but I was ready. And I was fortunate that my dad and Mr. Clark, Bob Clark, offered me a job in Florida during my senior year. Well, right at the end of it. And I'm like, well, let's give it a shot and see what happens. So that's kind of how it went. I didn't like grow up thinking, I want to do what my dad does, even though I thought it was the coolest thing ever. But some people may not know, my dad also practiced every day with the team in goal. He actually dressed 2 games as backup in the NHL, which people don't, some people know. He actually played a game in almost every league in hockey professionally. He played in the Southern Hockey League. He played in the North American Hockey League, the American Hockey League, and probably a couple I'm missing. So I almost looked at him as he was kind of a player, but he wasn't a player, obviously. But he did play games. So I thought it was cool what he did. But when I was younger, I didn't really think about doing that, until, like I said, till I got in college. So then I started really thinking about it, like, well, maybe that's something I'll enjoy. And so I got into sports management. I kind of changed my major. Yeah. So then I was like, well, let's see what happens. And I was very, very lucky and very fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a rare opportunity. So you already had kind of an athlete's mindset. It seems like so did your dad, right? It's one, people kind of, I'm sure to you, it's like kind of like, wow, he played in every league, but it's very difficult to even touch these leagues. I mean, you could be a world-class athlete your whole life and then get to the point, like I've talked to Colby Cohen on the side, and he was a star college hockey player.
Yes.
He got to the NHL and he's like, wow, I'm just a role player here. Right. And it's like, it's almost like a realization. So you were 5'8", you played soccer. Actually, 5'8" for soccer is not bad at all.
No, it didn't have, I was very lucky. The way it kind of happened was basketball is my main sport, but I don't want to say like, I was good, but I was pretty good at soccer.
D1?
I played D2, but we played
D2.
D1 schools, but now all the schools that we played against and my school are D1. But what happened
Of course,
quickly,
now.
yeah, of course, right? But I got a basketball scholarship. It was almost full. It's just a little bit left, which obviously was so grateful to get to help my mom out. And then I got a call from the athletic director probably about a week before the soccer players were going to school. And he called me and said, we were just looking at all your stuff and see that you were, you played soccer, you were all conference, all this, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, I love soccer. Like, what do you want to play? We'll take care of the rest of your scholarship if you'll play soccer. And I said, well, I need to ask Coach Smotzer, who was my basketball coach, because I didn't know how that would work in college, especially. And they're like, we already did. It really won't interfere. Just be some days where you kind of have to do 2 a days. You'll do a soccer and do a basketball at night. So I'm like, great. But I'm not going to lie to you. I was scared to death because I'm like, I wasn't scared about basketball, but I was like, I don't know what I'm getting into in soccer, although I played my whole life. But I ended up starting all 4 years in soccer, and basketball is a little different. It took me until my junior year to actually get real playing time, but and that should have been the way it was. I weighed $150, and I was playing with men, like 21-year-old, obviously college, but guys that were on the cusp of D1, and guys that played pro. I played with guys that played pro and stuff like that. So it was fun. It was a good ride.
That's really fascinating, actually. It's not that surprising. I played soccer growing up as well.
Okay.
And being Israeli, it was kind of obvious. But it's something I've always kind of understood about basketball players. Actually, basketball players make great soccer players. The footwork, it kind of goes, hand in hand. So it actually doesn't surprise me you're able to travel from one sport to the next. But this is one thing I like to talk about, because one of the things that drives me insane is this movie, let's say just call it Hollywood narrative about an athlete where athletes are stupid. And I find that to be not the case at all. I actually find that athletes have some of the best work ethic. And I think you can see that you took on let's say D2 sports, but D1 sports, even at this level, right? To take that on while going to college. Do you believe that that's where you kind of built your work ethic? And I'm sure maybe from your father, maybe from your mother even as well. What brought you to get to that mindset where you thought you could do so much?
Yeah, you're right. I really, at first, I didn't know how it was going to go. And I was a little worried because I didn't want to piss the basketball coach off, even though he said it was okay. I actually started taking naps in college, which I had never done because the rule was already implemented that you could not actually practice basketball until a certain date. We even had the Midnight Madness stuff, but the coaches would sit up in the offices and basically tell you what to do for basketball. So I would practice soccer. If we had a game that day, obviously I didn't go to the gym for basketball, but days we didn't, it was 2 a days. And my mom's a really hard worker. I watched her and she was a really good athlete, and my dad was a good athlete, and he was a hardworking guy, still is. They both are. So I guess from them, and, my mom was always very, very supportive with me playing sports in high school and even in college, even when I didn't play, but my freshman and sophomore year in basketball, I didn't get much time, but she was there at every game. And I said, stop driving 3 hours. Just watch me sit at the end of the bench and cheer everyone on and wave my towel, but she didn't care. So yeah, it was really cool.
That's awesome. And it's awesome that it's spread into you because, I think about that. Like my father, when he was alive, he had pretty relentless work ethic as well. What's up, little man? I had pretty relentless work ethic as well. And I didn't really appreciate it till I got older. And like my dad just worked all the time. Like even before he passed away, like he was talking about work in the hospital. He was like, oh, I got clients. I got to do all this stuff. It really is a mindset. And once you get into that mindset, it's really transferable to everything. What's up, buddy? It's okay. He's allowed to interfere. There's no professionalism here. Like I said, I have a guy who does this out of my bedroom.
No. Something else. I'll tell you in a minute. Let me do this. Go ahead, buddy. Go eat. You just got home? Sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, you'd be surprised. This is not the first time a child has interrupted the interview, so I'm not too worried about
He
it.
loves jumping in.
It's all good. He probably has a future like you. Honestly, he's probably
Oh,
watching you, learning from you.
He's so tired. He just drove separate, so he just got back from the rink. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah,
So your dad, I like you said, he was like, I got to do this, I got to do that.
right. It's like nonstop, and it's something that you gain from your parents, and it's interesting to see. And obviously, you followed in his footsteps. So, you mentioned Bobby Clark, and you mentioned the Florida Panthers. You got started with the Panthers, which is interesting, right? Most people probably assume that maybe you started with the Flyers or the Phantoms, right?
Yeah.
So how was it? Let's talk about that year. Let's talk about that first year. I mean, I guess you're out of college. You finished kind of your athlete years, I guess, to some degree. And you start off as an equipment manager. I assume not head equipment manager, right?
No, I was bottom of total pole, which I should have been, but I was still so lucky to get that job. You're basically the third guy, but you pick up the visiting teams. So, but my dad was not easy to work for, but I appreciate it now. I literally, I'll tell you this story. When we first got down there and we were set, everything was new. Obviously, they just built this tiny room for us in the Miami arena. That's where we played the first few years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was only there 1 year, but they played there a few years before they built the new one in Sunrise. But we get there. So we're there about a week and we're trying to get everything ready. Well, players are already coming in. First of all, it's Florida. So they're all coming down there. And Roger Nielsen was a coach and he liked to have, and it's sort of Mr. Clark. They used to do back in the day, the training camps were like 4 teams. It was always 4 teams and they played each other. And that's how they felt, I guess, we're going to learn more watching them play, than, whatever, doing drills. I mean, they still did drills and stuff, but it was basically games. And so we had like 80 players there. So this is my first time like really working. I had helped Dad out. I had done things, but I didn't understand what I was getting into. So we literally packed up an 18-wheeler and went from Pompano Beach practice rink down to the Miami Arena and started setting up. So I'm like, it's going to take us a few hours. We'll get set up. We didn't go to bed. Like literally, it was 6 a.m. and I'm like, we're just finishing. And my dad's like, we'll try to order some food in. And I'm like looking at Tim Leroy, who was my roommate, and he was an assistant equipment manager. And he was like, oh boy, he had worked with my dad a little bit in Kalamazoo. So he knew how my dad was. And I had never like really worked with my dad like this. And I'm just like, every little thing, he's straightening like something that this, a half an inch off. Like I didn't have it right, and I'm just like, what's wrong with you, man? Like this looks perfect to me. And he's like, well, it's not. It's got to be perfect or, I'm not going to let you leave or whatever. So we stay up the whole day, right? So we have the games. The guys practice and play. We stay again. Like, I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. So finally at around 11 p.m., we finally get to leave. So we've basically been up 48 hours. And I mean, we all partied college and stuff. I had late nights, but you also slept in, right? So, and I'm not like, I was never really a big sleeper anyway, but so finally I call my mom. I get to my hotel room and I call my mom and I'm like, I'm not sure I can do this. This is ridiculous. 48 hours. She's like, you haven't been to bed? I ordered a pizza. I didn't even go downstairs. Like it was 11 o'clock at night. Like where was I going to go? They were walking us across the street to go to some place to eat. I said, I'm just ordered a pizza. I ordered the pizza, fell asleep. They knocked. I got up, took it, set it down and went back to sleep and never even ate my food. And then the rest of training camp was crazy because he was taking me out to some games. I had to stay. I was just nuts, but I didn't know what I was getting into, but after a few weeks, I kind of got the gist of it all. And there were times where I would have 3 teams in town because all these teams wanted to come to Florida and kind of vacation, and teams still do that actually. Like even with the Flyers, like we would, depending where we were and what time of season it was in the games, we'd stay in nice places for a couple of, always LA, always stay there like 2 or 3 days. And that's what teams are doing. And I literally had to transport the equipment of the visiting team. So I remember one time I had Toronto, Chicago, and I think Ottawa, and I had 2 of them in different practice rinks. I'm alone. Like I'm driving to catch these guys, to put their gear and then put it somewhere in the arena, then take the other team back. I mean, it was nuts, but I learned so much and got to work. That was one of the cool things, was working with all the other teams, equipment guys, and watching them. And I remember saying to my dad sometimes, like, well, these guys aren't doing what you're doing. He's like, well, you're going to do it this way. Trust me, when you're the head guy one day, you'll appreciate what I'm doing. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm 22 years old. I'm like, yeah, well, whatever. But God, was he right? And then, I've had guys that worked under me that went on to do things. And one kid that, I say he's a kid, he's a grown man now, but Mike Lefsick, he's an equipment manager with the Flyers. And he started with me when he was 20. And he used to think I was crazy. And I said, I know you think I'm nuts, but I promise you, if you keep doing this. And as soon as he got a head job with Minnesota in the American League, and every year he said, man, I know exactly what you're telling me now, and I appreciate it. I said, well, that's the way my dad was. But that year in Florida was crazy. We missed the playoffs by 1 point that year. Clarkie put together unbelievable group, and Roger Nielsen, he had that defensive mindset, and John Van Beesbrook, I mean, he was the best goalie in the league that year. He was unbelievable. That was the only reason, probably, because we didn't score a lot of goals, but he didn't let a lot in. And even Mark Fitzpatrick was the backup, and he had a great year too. But it was a crazy year. I can't even tell you. It was wild, because I would stay in Miami all the time. I should have been going to bed, but I met people, and I'm like, they're like, dude, just come meet us. I'm like, you don't understand. I got to do this laundry, be back in Pompano by 8 a.m. or my dad's going to have my head. I'd end up just staying up all night and going to, probably not the best, obviously not the best thing to do, but I made it through the year. It was a lot of fun. It was so much fun.
That sounds amazing. So did you feel when you were, I guess, I want to say struggling, but it doesn't necessarily feel like you were struggling, but did it feel like you were failing as you were kind of going through this highly intense situation? Or did you feel like, I don't know what's going on, I'm kind of just going for the ride? Or did you feel like, oh man, maybe I'm not doing as well as I think I am type of feeling?
Well, the first month, I just didn't want to screw anything up. That was my biggest fear. I knew what I was doing. I wasn't like sharpening skates or having to fix skates. I was learning how to sew, and I was learning how to do those things. But my main objective was taking care of the visiting teams. And I learned a lot from those guys. Like I said, a lot of legends. I call them legends, guys that were in the game for so long, and they were so good to me. And I learned a lot from them, because I was with the other teams more than I was with the Panthers, unless I was traveling, which I ended up traveling a lot too that year, because my dad hurt his back. Timmy Leroy hurt his back. So there was one night I was in Long Island on the bench by myself. And I'm not kidding you, man. I was going to crap my pants, because I'm like, if something happens like major and they got to bring, and I don't know how to fix, like, to do it. I mean, I could do mostly everything, but I couldn't even enjoy being on the bench. Because usually if I was on the bench, I wasn't alone. I was the only equipment guy on the bench. And I'm like, please just don't let anything bad happen.
I know
there was nothing more than I had to stone a couple skates. Because back then, obviously you couldn't take the steel off, change it. But I never felt like I was doing bad, but I triple checked everything I did to make sure. You never want to be late, setting 3 alarms, because you can't be late to go to the airport, to pick a team up, because teams come in at 3 a.m. So usually you go park the airport, take a nap until they get there. But I wasn't overconfident, that's for sure. But I wasn't like thinking, oh my God, I'm not doing a great job, unless my dad was like, that looks like shit, fix it, But it was unbelievable learning experience for, like, I was thrown into the fire a bunch because of the staff getting hurt, more, so it was awesome. Like, I didn't want to, at the time, like, I'm like, I hope we never leave. This is great, Clark. But Mr. Schneider was like, you're coming back to Clarkie, and then so my dad's like, we're going. I'm like, okay, all right, whatever. So
that's awesome. Yeah, it's almost like you could hear your dad in the back of your mind the entire time, right? It's like you hear his words, and you're like, I'm not failing, but it's like almost like he's kind of watching you while you're on the bench type of vibe, right?
Oh yeah, he'd walk by like the coffee machine, which I like, have clean, and he would like run his finger on it and be like, I'm like, dude, there's nothing on that machine. That thing is, you could eat off of that thing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just checking.
Well,
busted my balls.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think I totally understand where he's coming from. Like as a kid, you despise that stuff, but then as an adult, you understand that it's really that granular little detail. And let's relate it to hockey. Let's relate it to sports right now. I mean, let's talk about the Flyers this year. The Flyers did not have the attention to detail that they needed this year for whatever reason. I'm not picking on anybody specifically,
Right.
but you see it. You see when the teams are just, and again, it's the hardest level of hockey in the world. So it's like, if you are not at that level where every little detail is paid attention to, you will suffer. Right. And I think that's what your dad was trying to put in your head, is that I am going to instill a mindset in your head that no matter where you go, no matter what you do, you will be successful. Would you say that that's pretty much what helped you kind of evolve?
Yes. Like watching him and watching, like I said, other trainers as well, equipment guys. We used to call us trainers, but now it's equipment. But yeah, for sure. Like it was always, that's why once I learned what he wanted, I knew what he wanted. It's hard. Like when you don't know, like
Right.
the first few weeks, like I think I'm doing doing things properly, and I was working hard, but like, he's like, you got, this is the way we want to do it. And here's why, which was cool. Sometimes he didn't have time to explain why, and I'm scratching my head going, this guy's crazy. Like he's crazy. But yeah, you're exactly right. It does translate into sports. The details, that's the biggest thing. Minor details.
They're huge.
And even on my side of things, like I just wanted the players, and this is what I got from him, is you want the players to come to the rink, and the only thing they have to worry about is playing the game.
Yep.
They don't have to worry about if their skates are sharpened, if their glove, the hole in their glove was fixed, whatever, scratch on their visor. To me, that's your job. If the players come in and they don't have to, now things happen, obviously, where like quickly things happen, but for the most part, you just want the players to have to just concentrate on what they have to do on the ice. You don't want there to be any distraction. Oh man, he didn't do my skates again, or he didn't fix this. That's the last thing you want as an equipment guy. And you're 100% right, man. The details are the biggest thing. The minor ones too, like the minor ones.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it makes sense. It's like a good friend of mine, he's actually younger than me. So it's amazing that he has this metaphor. He's almost a decade younger than me too. He has this awesome like little metaphor that I use now. So if I would like to build my own team, I live by this. He kind of draws this little circle and he goes responsibility. And then he draws a circle around and he goes, that's how my mind works. Right. So he goes, this is your responsibility for your job. He goes, I'm all here. So like, that's why the little details matter, because if you're being annoying, it's like, oh, well, I'm worried about the coffee machine because I'm worried about the coffee guy. And I'm worried about the person who wants the coffee and the player who might want the coffee later. And if that coffee is spilled, then all of a sudden he loses 5 minutes and he's late to practice. It's like all those little details that you don't think about down the line. And that's why your dad probably demanded perfection, because every little second, every little minute matters. Every inch matters, right? There's that Taking Back Sunday speech where he goes, this is a game of inches. Yep. And that is life. It's a game of inches. It seems like, and that's why I like this podcast, because it really is about learning that over time, the attention to detail and the discipline.
That's right.
So let's get into the fun stuff. So let's get into the dream job. You get the call from Clarky. From what I can tell, you started off with the Phantoms, which honestly is pretty freaking awesome. So tell me about that.
So, when we came back to Philly, I was with the Flyers for 2 years as an assistant, doing the trucks, just like I was doing there.
Okay.
Traveling a lot. The first year was a half season with a lockout. It was 94, 95.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, 94, 95. And then the next season was a full year. And then they started the Phantoms. And he says, if you want to do it here, you're going to have to be the head guy there. And I'm like, okay, perfect. I knew Billy Barber, from when I was a kid and everything. And he's just great man. And, Clarky said to me, he's like, when we were talking about it, he was like, Billy will look after you. You don't have to worry about, anything like that. And I'm like, oh, I'm not worried. I'm actually excited to take this step. But to be honest with you, my biggest fear was like, to do this, how long am I going to be And, you're thinking you start off the NHL. Not many people get to do that. And I realized how lucky I was.
Yeah.
I never took it for granted. That's not one day in the last 26 years that I ever take it for granted. But you do have that mindset when you start there, then you go, everybody says the minors, American League's a good league. And the Flyers, Mr. Snyder treated us like we were in the NHL. And I don't know if you remember, but I mean, the attendance was unreal. It was like set records the first few years. And it was so much fun. I was able to be on 2 teams that won the Calder Cup both times, and sold out buildings. Spectrum, the first one in '98, and then 2005 during the big lockout, we had that amazing team. I can't imagine there'll ever be a better American Hockey League team. And obviously because of the lockout, that was the reasoning. But I mean, you look at that team and all the guys that played in NHL.
Talking about Richards, Carter, Umberger.
Richards, Carter, Umberger. I mean, Myers, Jones. Just there's guys I'm missing. Obviously, Ninamaki.
Yeah.
A ton of guys, and Patrick Sharp. Todd Fedoruk he had already been in the NHL a little bit, but we just had an amazing team and just so much fun. Johnny Stevens was a coach, and I had him as a player. His nickname's Rambo because he's such a warrior. That guy is unbelievable. He was awesome Johnny Stevens. Yeah.
Wow.
He was a captain. He was the first captain for the Phantoms, and his career got cut short. He took a slap shot in the eye. So he was, he became an assistant coach that year, but I'll tell you what, I wouldn't trade that time with the Phantoms. I learned so much and worked with some unbelievable people, players, just everything. I mean, I like I said, going into it, I'm like, man, how long am I going to be here? Like, it was fun. Don't get me wrong, but I'm like, I want to get back. It's just not that easy. It's so hard. I get so many people that reach out like, what's my best thing to do to get it? I'm like, man, I was lucky. Like the best thing to do is send your resume to everyone and just hope, meet people, network, do the best you can, because I was just lucky. That's a bottom line. And I realized that, but those Phantom years were unbelievable. They were so much fun.
Yeah. And did you find that the attitudes of the players, at the fact that a lot of them are younger, right, at that time, were they more appreciative of what you were doing? Did you feel like maybe you were more even of a leader at that level than you were maybe at the NHL level, where they're kind of more adults? They've had other equipment managers. They've been in the NHL maybe even longer than you, some of them, right? Did you find that your role was kind of different in the AHL?
Yeah, it was, with the kids coming in, like you always had veterans. That rules changed a little bit. There's only so many veterans they have, but we had veterans, and the Flyers always made sure that we had really good veterans.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like guys that were borderline, that had played NHL, or you could lose them to call-ups and stuff. Like we had Peter White.
Right.
Christ,
Peter White.
Whitey, I call him White Bread. White Bread led the American League in scoring 3 out of 4 years in a row. And I'm talking like 120 points a year. I mean, this guy, I'm like, how's this guy not in NHL? His skating wasn't that he was slow. It was just like he could slow the game down in the American League. But when you saw him play in the NHL, he didn't look slow. He kept up with the pace, but he was just, God, that guy. I played basketball. So like we talked about, and I love passing. Like I love the no looks. White Bread was like the first guy I ever see like act like he's going up to the point, fire a pass right across the crease. A guy just tap it in. Guys are like, holy cow, man. Like he was so good. He could score too. But with the younger kids, I wasn't much older, but I was older, and I had been in the NHL for 3 years. And I tried to do that, anytime they need help, even honestly, when I was in the NHL, we have, how young kids are now in the league.
Yeah.
They come sit in the office and, oh man, like this and that. And I felt like after so many years, you're able to kind of help, or at least give, like, you're an ear for them. And,
sure.
But yeah, for sure with the Phantoms, the first, especially as I was there, I think I was there 9 years. I love doing that, man. It was part of the job,
It's awesome.
It was fun. It was fun.
It's awesome. Actually, I want to dig into that a little bit, what you said there. They're noticeably, this is one thing that drives me nuts. And I know we live in a Twitter world, and I get in a lot of Twitter battles, though I don't make it personal. I just tend to defend players because I hate the way people talk about professional athletes. Like they just throw away all this work that these people put in. But they are kids, right? Like that's how I see them. Like I see even like Nolan Patrick, right, with the injuries that he's gone through. All of these kids, they're kids to me. Like I'm only 34, right? I'm about to turn 34. They're kids to me. So I see them persevering, and I see, when I see them fluctuate, is that normal for you when you see players kind of struggle in the NHL or, kind of go up and down? Do you take it as like, oh yeah, he'll work his way through it? Is that kind of your attitude?
Yeah, and you couldn't have picked a better example. Nolan Patrick, I love him. Like we hit it off right away when he got here, and you're right, he's a kid, and I don't know, he gets a lot of shit.
I don't. Drives me nuts.
And I'm just like my buddies and stuff, like we talk about it, like you're saying, and I do defend the players a lot of time because I was fortunate enough to be in there and I know what's going on. And, a lot of media act like they know what's going on.
Absolutely.
And they don't have a clue.
I can tell
what is going on in the room. Mm-hmm. But Patty, I don't know, like you probably know, he comes in, he had been hurt for a year. So he's starting the season off. This guy hadn't even played. And he had a slow start. And then it was funny. He started getting healthy around January, and all of a sudden, because I was just like, well, he's got sick hands no matter what. It's like Savard in Boston said one night, me and Chief were talking to him because he was really good buddies with Chief. He actually played with Craig Berube in Calgary. And Chief said, like giving him, he looked a little hefty, like he was saying, a little out of shape, need to get on that soup diet again. He goes, boys, I could stick handle in a wheelchair out there because his hands are so good. I thought it was one of the funniest things. But Patty's got hands like you can't even believe. But he started skating because he got healthy. And people didn't know that he had these surgeries because they're not going to announce it.
Right.
So he played hurt half the year. Then he picked it up. He had a good second half.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no, he didn't score a goal a game, but he's, like you said, he's 19-year-old kid playing with men in the National Hockey League. 30 points. And so the next year he gets hurt. And I'm not a medical guy. I can't say too much about that. I don't want to get into all that, but he was having issues and I felt so bad for him. And then obviously the next year, which is a big year for these guys, their third year, because that's when they're going to get their next contract.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't even play, and so this year, I've been reading things, get rid of him. Like
unbelievable.
His
right?
ice time wasn't. And, I know you have to earn your ice time at anywhere you play, but this year was so screwed up, which I don't have to say, like with everything, with the team, just wasn't their year. But people are shitting on this kid. I'm just telling you, this kid he's good, man. Like
he's very good.
Be a very good player.
Yeah.
He can't play fourth line, man. Like you can't expect he's a skilled guy. Like he can't play fourth line. And if he does, he's not going to put up 25 goals.
Yeah. The way I kind of took it is the same thing with Lindblom. I felt that they were sheltering him, and that's not normal. And I heard people, why isn't he sent to the AHL? In my mind, because he's probably too good to be playing in the AHL. And the reality is what I saw is they dropped his minutes. I see his confidence actually take a hit, quite frankly. And I see him flubbing pucks that I know he can handle, right? Flubbing shots, I know he can do it. Now, I talk about this all the time. I actually wrote an article about positivity. I never received so much negativity in my life. And I kind of expected it. But and that's why the players can feel this, right? Yeah. And that's where I'm like, that's why I was asking you earlier is, how do you kind of offset that? Because somebody like Patty, like he is getting so much negativity, unjustified. I mean, you're talking about 2 injuries and then missing an entire season, yet he's still in the NHL.
Yeah.
I bring it up to people. Majority of 19-year-old kids would have never been able to even touch the NHL ice, yet he was still able to do it. Like if you were kind of, I don't want to say like, what would you say to Patty, but like, do you see that stuff and go, like I kind of wish I was there to kind of give him more, like maybe you even are there to some degree.
Yeah. Like I still talk to him and stuff, but not like I would be able to, not like I normally would, because, every day he's sitting in my office, that's one of the biggest things I miss. But I do talk to him quite a bit and he's he has confidence, but like you said, when your minutes are cut and you're getting scratched, and you don't really know where you stand, and and like we said, it was a crazy year. I don't even,
It was insane.
I'm not a coach or a GM, but this kid is. I had dinner with Ghost, Shane Gostisbehere the other day,
Yeah.
and we were talking about Patty. He's like, dude, this guy, people don't understand how sick of a player he is.
He's ridiculously talented.
He really is. And I just hope now this year, like I know he came to camp, he was in good shape, but he's going to have a real summer to train. And I just hope he shoves it up everyone's ass, man.
That's exactly how I say.
And because he's healthy, knock wood, he's healthy. I know he's healthy. Have a really good summer to train, and I can't wait to, I'm really thinking he's going to have a breakout year and be the player that people, I mean, Christ, imagine being 14 and you've been told you're the best player basically in the world at 14, from 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. Now he was hurt, and I don't know if that had something to do with the Devils taking Nico. Nico's a good player too. I mean, he's not scoring 40 goals a year.
No.
And you don't hear people like going crazy about that. But anyway, I hope Patty comes back, and I think he will.
I think so too.
I think he wants to. I think he wants to show like who he is and what he is.
Yeah, and I think you brought up Shane there, Ghost, and I think that's really important. Actually, he's another guy. I defended him for the past 3 years. Everybody wants to throw these guys away. That's why this podcast exists, because I never gave up. I joked around on my last videos. I'm like, this isn't Space Jam. It's not like somebody came and just took the talent out of these guys' body.
Right. Yeah.
Right. This is the reality. Like, I train, I run every day, I work out every day. There's a physical toll that your body, there's no way Patrick was going to get into game shape for this season. There's just no way. And you add the fact, like, look at other players, like even somebody like Travis Sanheim, who's an immensely good skater, like fantastic skater. I watched him fall randomly several times. That is a kid, in my opinion, that lives and dies by confidence. Right. That's another one. And a lot of these guys are kids. And I think, let's go back to your dad a little bit. And like, this is why I think your dad was doing what he was doing, right? He was knocking you down a peg, right? Because when life does, you're already ready for it. You've already heard the criticism every single day, right? And when you get to the NHL, and I'm guessing because I don't play in the NHL, right? But most people have a job, their boss says something to them one day, they're thrown off for an entire day. Imagine you have a stadium full of 20,000 people that are booing you. One person I like to bring up, and a lot of people hate on him, Andrew McDonald. And I bring it, I guarantee
drove me nuts.
I guarantee he's a great guy. When they booed him in the home opener, I thought that was so embarrassing.
Yeah.
That this guy is giving you his all. It's not his fault that he's being played as a top pairing defender.
No.
It drove me nuts. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say that was I love you brought him up, because what is he going to say when he gets offered a contract like that?
Yes.
No, I'm probably more worth like 2.5 to 3. What do you want him to do? Not take? He makes too much money. What do you want him to say? No. If you walk into, like, it made me laugh. Like, people, no, he's not a number one, but he was playing there and he gave every single thing he had, and he was one of the top 3 favorite players in that locker room, and that's who people listen to. He was a leader. He never let that shit bother him, and I loved it. And, I never go at people on Instagram or whatever, because I don't, it's not worth it. And I don't want to get into that. And I know some people are just doing it to get something out of someone, but it used to drive me nuts the way people buried that guy. And I mean, this he put his face in front of shots to keep him out of the net. And like, if you're watching a game, you have to see that and appreciate it. No, he's not scoring 15 goals. Because he never did. The reason he was picked up at the trade deadline by the Flyers was because he was literally the most sought after defenseman. He was going to be a free agent, and he led the league in block shots.
Mm-hmm.
And he was going to get that money somewhere, maybe more. So yes, he wasn't a top guy like you said, but I mean, my God, were you going to say no when someone offers you that kind of money? No, you're not. You're going to take it.
Like you said, if he made half, we would have heard no complaints about him.
Right.
In my opinion. It's literally something the crowd does, and it drives me nuts. And But again, that's why I talk about all this stuff, like attention to detail and the ride of going up and down, because a lot of people ignore it. Like, they kind of pick favorites with one guy and not another guy, and this guy's injured and get rid of him this year. And it's really just about, you have to let them all kind of work through it. And while people didn't like AMAC, we talked about Shane Gostisbehere. I don't know these guys like you do, but I almost guarantee that a big reason why Shane Gostisbehere was successful and had a good locker room experience was probably because he played closely with AMAC. And I imagine even Provorov, like these guys, like, so what? They're not a star player, but you need an adult in the room. And that's one thing I actually think the Flyers didn't have enough of this year, is having guys who could handle that spiral, right? And Justin Braun, was maybe the only guy who really experienced enough to even deal with that. Is that something you saw regularly, kind of, I guess, at your time in the AHL, NHL?
Yeah, you like Riley Cote brings that up a lot about leadership. It's not crapping on the leadership group, but it always is nice when you do have that guy that's been around. And Claude's been around, Jake's been around. It's not like they haven't been around, but like you said, it's better to have they have a young team.
Name more.
Yeah. I think, you go out and they try, and, Niskanen, you had no idea that was coming.
Yep.
So that guy is a very quiet guy, but man, did he keep things. I was only there for 46 games, I think, the year before last year. But Niski, I knew Niski a little bit from USA Hockey, and he's just one of those guys. I've said it before to people, like, you could send Niski this long text and ask him like 4 questions and you need the answers. And he'd be like, okay, well, you didn't answer one thing. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, whatever, dude. But that's just Niski. And he'd be laughing the next day. But he kept Sanheim, Myers, calm. Hey, it's okay, man. Turn the puck over. No big deal. Just make a play here next. And he was so effective that way. He was a perfect pairing for Provy, because I think Niski was a little underrated. Like, people didn't understand, like, he can play the game. Like, he's just a smart player. He's mean as a rattlesnake too, which I don't know if the Philadelphia people really knew, because you only got him for a year, but the guy's mean. And when he spoke on the bench to the other team, not that he's some big monster like Tom Wilson or Revo, but when he talked, guys knew, like, I'm either going to get it in the wrist, something's going to happen. I got to answer the bell. He told a great story about, I don't know if you remember a few years ago when he hit Lawton, Scotty, when he was playing in Washington, and it knocked Scotty. He had a concussion. And we were playing them, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks later. So Scott Lawtz is back in the lineup. And now Niski's telling this when he's with us, and he was like, I was so worried when we played you guys, because all I could think was Wayne Simmons is coming after me. Yeah. He's like, I didn't take a nap. I couldn't sleep the night before the game. I was exhausted before the game. And I'm just like, keep looking. He goes, we have that face off, and Lawtz tapped him and said, hey, we got to go. And Niski says in the room, and we all started dying laughing. He goes, I've never been more happy that Lawtz was the guy. He's like, literally, I went, oh, thank God. He's like, okay, yeah, let's go. Because then he wouldn't have to fight Simmer, But
that's awesome.
Niski, they did miss a lot, and that got thrown at him last second. I hate to say one guy's gonna make a difference, but he made a difference in the room. But I still think at that level you got to find a way.
Yeah.
And if you don't, like, they got Gustafson in, he didn't really work out. So
I think it was a snowball effect. I think there's so many things went wrong this year. Like I said, a game of inches. It's not like they finished at the bottom of the league, right? It was like it was just so many things went wrong, and it's not even an excuse. That's what people don't understand. It's not an excuse. It's just the reality. Like they'll even say we didn't handle it well enough. What I would say to my team is, you better go and have the best offseason of your life. That's what I would say to everybody. Come in and bring your A game. Learn from it. Learn from the failure. Even AV said that in his exit interviews.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this. So you're Phantoms. What happens? You become Flyers. You finally, I guess, you get promoted, right? And you move on to the Flyers.
Well,
how did that happen?
So what happened was we played basketball every day, rain, snow, 110 degrees. Paul Holmgren loves playing basketball. Obviously, I like playing basketball. Awesome. Guys in the rink, the staff members were kind of afraid to play. Homer gets a little wild when he's playing. I've got a couple teeth that are missing from that.
Oh
but we used to do it all the time. So it's the middle of the summer. I was actually going to, it was my first world championship. I was going to Riga, Latvia, where it is this year, actually, in a few weeks. And Homer comes down and we're all getting ready to play. I think it was like 3-on-3, guys from some trainers and then guys upstairs. And he goes, "Oh, did you see your boy Dino got the job in LA?" And I was like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, he's president and GM." And now Dean was working with us. Dean Lombardi was working with us as a scout. So I became close with him. And I was like, "Well, did you call him and ask him if," like, he goes, "Well, he just did his press conference. Do you want me to call him?" Or, "He did it this morning." And I'm like, "I didn't even see that." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you want me to call him?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, I want you to call him." And he goes, "All right, hang on." I didn't think he was going to do it right then. Well, Homer goes inside, right? So I think he went in my office, I guess. I don't know where he went. And so we're kind of waiting. We're shooting around. And about 10 minutes later, he comes out. He goes, "All right, let's go check up." Like, and I'm like looking at him like, "Well, did you, and he doesn't say anything. So we play a game. And the whole time I'm like, is he not going to say anything to me? So we finished the first game and I'm like, "Hey, Homer, did you get a hold of Dino?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You're his guy." And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah." He said, "You're his guy. He'll call you tomorrow." And I'm like, "Don't F around, man. Like, come on." And he's like, "D, I just got off the phone with him. He said, you're his guy. He'll call you tomorrow." So I'm like, okay. So I was like, I didn't even want to play basketball anymore. I'm like, I just want to talk to Dino, right? So next day he calls me and he's like, "Hey, like, I got to make some personnel moves here, but you're my guy, like, blah, blah, blah. I'll see you in Riga because I'm going over," because he's USA guy. He goes, "I'll see you over there. We'll talk more, but get you situated, sign your deal. We can do it there." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm the head equipment manager for the LA Kings." So I go to Riga. I didn't say anything to anyone at this time because the people that were there were still there. And unfortunately, it sucks when your friends or people are going to lose their job. That sucked, that side of it. But of course, I'm like beyond happy. Like, I'm going to do this. And so we're over there, and it was probably about the third day. And I was working with two of my good buddies Ray Barilli, who's the medical guy in St. Louis still to this day. And then Bert Godin was their equipment guy there for a long time, Bertie. And so it was us three. And I was just sitting there in the locker room waiting for the guys to get there because we had a game. And Bertie comes in there and goes, "You little sneaky bastard." And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Did you want to tell us something?" It's both of them standing there. I'm like, "What?" He goes, "LA." And I was like, "Oh, how'd you find out?" And he was like, "Well, they just came up. Like, we just got a bunch of texts. They let people go and they said you got the job." And I was like, "Yeah, I just didn't want to say anything." And they were like, "Oh," they were going crazy. They were so happy for me. And I'm there 2 weeks. The day we lost, the players they leave right away. Like, I mean, they're gone. We were, like I said, in Riga, Latvia. So the next day, after we cleaned up, takes a day. You got to pack everything up, and they have places they ship all the U.S. stuff. And we were sitting at dinner, and Jimmy Johansson just passed away a couple years ago. God bless him. His phone rings, and we're at dinner. There's about 10 of us. And he's like, "Yeah, hang on." He goes, "It's Homer." And I'm like, "Yo," he had just left like 12 hours. Like, I just saw him. And he goes, "Hey, what if I told you could stay here?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean I could stay here?" And he's like, "Well, be with the Flyers." And I'm like, "The head guy with the Flyers, or, as an assistant?" Because I wasn't going to pass this up. And he's like, "Yeah, the head guy." And I'm like, "Well, okay." He goes, "Just come see me when you land tomorrow." I'm like, "I don't get home till like 9. He goes, "Come to the rink anyway." So I met him at like 10 o'clock at the rink, and we talked. And then, so I had my meeting with Homer, or sorry, Mr. Clark. And I felt terrible too, because a good buddy of mine, Jim Turk Evers, was losing his job, and I wanted to make sure he knew it wasn't me that took it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I was going to LA, like that was my plan, and that was their decision that they made. And, obviously it was a dream of mine to be in, like, bleed black and orange, man. Like,
Of
it's,
course.
so it was a crazy few weeks there. I was getting phone calls seriously from people I didn't know in LA. Hey, I heard you coming out this day. Like, I'll take you around, show you, like, find you a good place to live, this and that. I'm like, okay. Like, I don't even know who I'm talking to. Right. Like,
Right.
it was wild. And I'm not gonna lie, I was excited, like, to go to LA, and because I love Dean Lombardi, and I just like the way he did things. He's always like jacked up and fired up, and I
Yeah.
love that about him.
Yeah, you got that attitude too, right? So
Yeah,
it
so
works.
I'm like probably too hyper most of the time, but so is Dino's the same way. But I was really excited about it, but then obviously I was just over the top thrilled to get
It's a
to
dream.
do what I wanted. Yeah, it was a dream for sure.
That's such a cool story, and I'm sure an emotional roller coaster there for you.
Yeah.
So let me ask you something. Let's get into I guess the downside of that. You get your dream job, you lose your dream job, right? It kind of comes full circle, though. I believe, what was it, 13 years later? Was that you did 13 years with the Flyers, or was it 11 years later?
So, almost 15 years.
Wow, 15.
Yeah, so
Unbelievable.
2006, I think, was my first year. So
that's awesome.
Something like, yeah.
And
14 to 15, yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost like being an athlete, right? You kind of watch your rotation. You're like, wow, it's come full circle. And this is what I want to. I don't want to talk in specifics because I don't want to get into why it happened, and I don't want to. I don't like drama, so I don't want to talk about that. But I want to talk about how you handled it. How do you handle losing your dream job? And not just that, Derek. You handled it very elegantly. Like, if you think about where you are today, the way you talk about the organization, I don't hear any. I don't hear any complaining. Nobody hears any public statements. Nobody hears any backsass. Right? It's almost like you're humbled still by it till today. How'd you manage that?
I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't easy. Obviously not expected. Been there 25 years and gave everything I had. I can't. I would love to tell you exactly kind of what went down. I can't yet. I'm still under contract. But it was the hardest thing I've ever dealt with, obviously. And what really sucked is I watched my dad go through it, and it was unjust for him.
Yeah.
It was tough. It was tough to watch him go through that. And then when it happened to me, I'm just like, I was almost in shock.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, for a while, for a couple of weeks, I'm just like, and talking to the guys, and everyone's just like, what the heck's going on? And obviously I wasn't going to say anything bad about the organization or anything like that, but I'm not going to lie to you. It was really, really hard. In saying that, like, there's way worse things going to happen. And that's the way I started thinking about it. I'm like, you know what, man, like, I'm healthy. Like, I still got a year and a half left on my contract, which they can't take it away from me because I didn't do anything wrong. So, let's see what I can do here. What can I do? First thing was spending way more time on my son, which has been just the greatest, to be honest with you. Still some days where it's tough, like, especially when you're watching and, you're watching a guy struggle, and there's just things you see that I won't say, but there's things I see and it just bugs the heck out of me. But I love all those guys, and most of the people there were just, 25 years. I met so many great people, and I mean, like I told you before, I never took a day of it for granted, like, ever. And that's what that hurts me more than anything. Is just because, like, I feel like I'm one of those people that get along with everyone. Even if I don't like you, it ain't worth it. it's not worth it to
Totally.
even deal with stuff like that. I just be nice and move along if there's someone that I maybe didn't like or something. But it was the hardest thing. It was tough. It was really tough, and it's still tough. I'm not gonna lie. I went
Yeah.
to a game finally because my son was driving me crazy.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really hit me was during the playoffs before the boys went to the bubble. They came back into town and it's summer. So they're over here every day at the pool and by pool hanging out and, some of the guys. And so my son was still getting to see the boys, which is cool, which is really what he missed,
Sure.
and trying to explain to him why we can't go to the rink. I'm like, Daddy got traded. I didn't know what to say to him, and
yeah.
he asked me every day for 3 to 4 months, do we know where you got traded yet? Like, do you think St. Louis? So it's just so funny because I actually got chuckles out of it because he came running up the stairs one day. I'm doing laundry, like Mr. Mom, like doing laundry now at home. And he comes in, he goes, Dad, I think I know where you're going. And I'm like, what? And he goes, I think I know where you got traded. And I'm like, you do? I said, what, did it come across the ticker on you watch? Because all he does is watch hockey, network, right. NHL network, videos, like all this stuff. And I said, did it come across the bottom? Because he knows, like, he can read. Obviously, he's almost 7. But he goes, no, but I think I figured it out. I think you're going to St. Louis. And because he says that because of Braden Shen and Ruby, he knows them real well, right? And Ryan O'Reilly signed a stick. I won't say what it says because it's hilarious, but he loves the Blues. That's one of his favorite teams. Anyway, he goes, I think it's to St. Louis. And I'm like, well, for who? And he goes, Tarasenko. And I went, oh, so the Flyers are getting Tarasenko and St. Louis gets me? He goes, I think so. And I said, I don't think it's them. And I'm like trying not to laugh because he's dead serious. Like he's just thinking this stuff up in his head. And I said, I think I'm going to Boston. He goes, that might be it. Probably for Pasta. I went, yeah, they're going to trade Pasta for me, buddy.
right.
He thinks I'm the greatest. He thinks I would be a game-winning goal, with what I do. But he missed it. That was the toughest thing for me, to be honest with you, was him not being able to see the guys like that. And, I used to take him down, let him give the guys high fives on the way out to the bench.
Sure.
Let him stand on the bench for warm up. That was like, he missed that really a lot. And watching him, he was upset for months, like crying in the mornings, at night. Like,
it probably hurt even more, right?
Yeah. And that's it started pissing me off, like it hurt watching him, go through
hurt
that.
Even more. Yeah.
But what I was going to say was one of the things that made me think a little clearer was we were watching the boys in the playoffs, and he's like, he says to me, Dad, I'm sorry you can't be there with the guys. And I said, you know what, Elvie, if I was there, I wouldn't have seen you for the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, you can't go there, buddy. Like, you couldn't go. I wouldn't have been home. And I showed him on the calendar. I'm like, you wouldn't have seen me. And he was like, oh, and I said, and I'd rather watch it with you anyway, because awesome. It was true. Like, I really was sitting there like, I wouldn't have seen him. Like, you go on these trips in sports, as like on the East, the travel's way better than in the Western
distance.
Part of it.
Sure.
But, you go away for 10 days, you come home, your kids look different. Like, because, it's 10 days is a long time, but you're talking 8 weeks. And the players, God bless them, the ones with the kids, man, that was hard on them. And it was hard on all the players that were there, not just the Flyer guys, the guys that went all the way. You imagine not seeing your families for almost 3 months, like 2.5 months, man. But it was hard. But you know what? Like you said, I just picked myself up and said, what am I going to do here? What am I going to do? And I actually had a couple offers, but they just weren't what I wanted. And I'm not talking about, I got to be a head guy. I don't care about that anymore. I was fortunate enough to do that for a long, long time. And if I even do get back into it, if I get the opportunity, I don't care about that. I never even said, hey, I'm the head guy. Like, I never did that. We're a team. The staff, you're a team, you got to work together. But if it ever, if something comes up that's good enough, I'll do it. But I'm enjoying myself right now and being with him a lot and seeing my daughters more. It's just great.
Yeah, again, I haven't been in your shoes, and my dream is to be GM of the Flyers, and I would even know taking that job, I'm going to be fired. Like, I kind of assume that you get fired from almost all of these roles, and not that I'm saying that you should have been fired or anything like that, but I do find this thing. There's a motivational speaker called Les Brown. I listen to him quite often, and he said something that actually kind of stuck with me quite a bit. And he goes, when you have something important to do in life has a way of moving on you. Right. And, like, it's one of those things where you're in a position for a very long time. I don't want to say you're comfortable, because that comfortable is a wrong way of putting it. You're at the NHL level doing something incredible. But, you start looking at the other details, like your son, your daughters, maybe you're raising a future superstar hockey player. Maybe a future. Maybe he's going to be running a team. Maybe he's going to be doing these things, and you don't even see that now. You don't see the path laid out in front of you, and odds are you're probably going to get another offer to some degree because of your resume to something, right? And it's really up to you, right? And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I think you've actually handled it fantastic. And it's something, in my opinion, would crush most people. And you seem to have a very positive attitude, and you seem to be rebounding it. And I know that you have your own business now, right? Where you're doing your own skate. I guess, is it just skating, or is it all hockey equipment?
Equipment, repairs, sharpening, profiling. But the majority is skates. Like, I'm working on people's skates and fixing them. From what they've had done. But I did a little bit of everything. Apparel. Done. I got into doing like team apparel for teams locally. I did outfitted a school in Cleveland this year with gloves, helmets, pants, workout stuff. So it's crazy how it all starts happening. And it's funny, like learning that side of I guess I which, you're spoiled working for the Flyers. Whatever something costs, it sounds arrogant, but I don't mean it that way, but it's like they have the money. It's just like,
sure,
get it, whatever it is, get it. Not wasting money. I'm not saying that, but if, whatever something is, but now knowing what these things cost. And then we just had the parents meeting for my son's team coming up this year. And they put the price list down in front of us for the stuff that they're trying to get us to buy. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, the markup on it, but I would have never known that. I would have never known that if I wasn't doing this. Not that it really matters, but I've already learned so much with those sort of things. But it's Settlemyre Skate Sharpening, and I do a little bit of everything. I mean, just whatever hockey, I'm still sewing, fixing gloves, relacing gloves, goalie gloves, whatever it may be. So I'm doing that. So it's a lot of fun, and learned a lot about youth hockey. It's crazy, man. Like, I've heard that in the past, but never really dealt with it till now. And like, I have all these parents. I've been so fortunate, so lucky to have so many clients already within a year. I'm busy as heck, and it's great. And I've met a lot of cool new people, man. But learning about I guess locally and around the area, even in Pennsylvania, just how hockey works and how political it is. It's crazy, man. I had no idea. I had kind of heard rumblings from friends of mine that had kids that play in there, but they were just like, they're like laid back, kind of like, be like, yeah, whatever. Just, but it's wild, but it's been fun. It's been fun. And I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I can only imagine. It's almost like your dad. Again, I keep bringing it up because my dad keeps coming to my life. But that attention to detail, it's going to come up now, right? And kind of running this business that you're doing, you're like, you probably have these little things that you notice that, you have all this experience. And obviously, I know you're doing Nasty Knuckles as well with Riley Cote, which is kind of like, if you think about it, you're like the Joe Rogan. The two of you combined are like the Joe Rogan of hockey right now in Philadelphia, and you're kind of bringing it full circle. I mean, to be honest with you, I find in my life that when I've been kicked down the hardest, it's typically when the best things have happened to me afterwards. So I couldn't imagine a case where this might evolve you into a level that maybe you've never even dreamt of, where you might be on the path of doing something that is such a large impact to the sport that you might not even be able to visualize that right now. Like I said,
Right.
when life, when sometimes when you're in the same position, life has a way of moving on you, kind of forcing you to be like, hey, like you have a role to play here.
Right.
And almost like it's kind of playing out and you're like, wait a second, I'm spending time with my kids. I'm meeting all this youth hockey. And then, next thing you know, you might be doing stuff for the NHL at a level that you weren't even prepared for. I mean, you're 50, right? But you look like, in my opinion, you look like you're in your late 30s, right? You have energy like you're in your 30s, right?
Yeah.
Imagine where that'll take you, especially with the attention to detail, the experience, the connections that you build. Like you probably know more NHL players and GMs and equipment managers than anybody alive, right?
Yeah.
Just imagine where that'll take you in the future.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope you're right. And it's hard though. Like you said, it's hard at first. Like it's still hard to this day. But you're right. Like you just have to, like, that's the way I'm thinking. Like Riley and I were always talking about, we started talking about maybe doing a podcast. I'm like, I don't know the first thing about it. He's like, yeah, but like you're a goofball. You can just be yourself and, blah, 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 whatever. And we started doing it. Man, is it fun? Like it's so much fun. And we've been really fortunate. Like a lot of things have kind of spun off of it that we've done that hasn't really come out yet. I can't really say too much, but we're doing a lot of really cool things and it's so much fun. I will say this, it's a lot of work doing all these other things and trying to keep everything straight here in the shop and asking people, oh, hey, can I move your appointment? But I feel so bad saying no to anyone that comes to me because it's like, oh man, Joey's got big tryouts tomorrow. And it's like 8:30 at night. I'm like, all right, come on over, man. I mean, I literally have this one kid who's getting ready to go away to play. He's a good player. And he called me the other night, 10:15. He's like, dude, I got to skate at 7 a.m. please. And I'm like, just get over here, man. I don't want to say no to him because I want them to, do the best they can. So yeah,
repeats itself.
Yeah. Right. And
that's what you're doing for NHL players, man.
Yeah. And you know what? I want to help everyone that comes in here. I don't ever say anything poorly about anyone that maybe have done their skates when I can see that they're like way off. I just say, hey, look, this might be why you were, when you were turning to your right, you were slipping because, it's uneven. We'll fix it. But I never send a picture. I never show anyone because I don't want anyone to think, oh, he's trying to show us up at this rate or that rate. That's not at all. I know a few people that do skates around here and I tell people if that's really, I'm like, oh, he's good. Cause I'm not that guy. I'm not, that might be a way to get business, but I don't want to do that. That's not me. So
yeah. Well, it sounds like you're
enjoy it.
Legitimately self-confident. That's where I usually find if you're not bashing those around you, it comes from an internal strength. And it seems like you have it, right? And that's, I like going back to your dad because it seems like that has paid off, right? That attitude that your dad put into you, it's paying off in your ability to handle things that have come into your life. I honestly, I mean what I say. I can only imagine where you're going. How many equipment managers have a podcast where you're bringing on NHL legends and talking about this stuff and building a brand slowly? Like you said, you've only been doing it for a year. Imagine where you're going to be in 5, right? Imagine what you can do with all of this stuff. And it's really just the beginning for you, the way I see it. And I said the same thing to Riley. I mean, what he's doing, Body Check Wellness, it's very unique. Right. And it's like you guys didn't find each other by accident, in my opinion.
Yeah, right.
It's like it's almost like this perfect meld of things that need to happen. And I hope the Flyers regret what they did. And I hope maybe one day you'll even get a second chance. But the way I see it is, the sky's the limit for you, man. And I think you're proving that. And it's really awesome. So I'm going to ask you one more thing here before we wrap it up.
Okay.
So you met a ton of players in your time, okay? An endless amount. Give me a couple guys, 2, 3, whatever you want. Who are the guys that are the most memorable that either, realistically that you maybe did equipment for? Like, who did you love their personality? Who stuck with you the most? Who do you maybe talk to today? Or who's a guy that you're like, oh, man, I wish the Flyers held on to this guy.
Oh man,
He's got a great personality.
You got to remember, I did this for 26 years.
Yeah.
I got quite a few, but oh man,
I know it's tough to pick the favorites.
Like, believe it or not, right? Like, I was Riley's best man at his wedding. The day I met him, I've told this story before, but we got along right away. Like, he's a guy, like, when he retired to become a coach, but he was still around. So it wasn't like I lost him. Gosh, let me really think. There's been who one of my favorite people was Radko Gudas. I mean,
nice.
You talk about just a happy guy, man. Like every day, just so happy and just so much fun to be around. Like you just want to be around that guy. Jake Voracek's a guy you just want to hang around. People are probably like, "What?" This guy's one of the funniest.
I believe that
you ever meet in your life. He will say whatever the hell he wants.
I love that about him.
But I love it about him too. Like, because he doesn't hold back. He'll tell you a good thing or he'll tell you a bad thing, but he's going to be honest. God, I really have to think. I mean, I met a lot of guys too with USA Hockey, like Patrick Kane. Like, what a player, man, and what a good guy. Dustin Bufflin, believe it or not, man. Like, I only had him a couple times. I literally we text almost every day on Snapchat. Like, we're like, I'm serious, like almost every day. People are like, how do you even know Buff? I'm like, met him USA Hockey, and we just got along, and we've always, like messaged each other. But gosh, trying to think someone that really, really. It's funny. Mark Gregg, who was the captain with the Phantoms for years, he's a scout. He's a great scout. He's just
he is.
If this guy would have been pushed, if he'd have been born a few years later, he'd have been at NHL his whole career. Like, hey, the guy, the way he skates, shoot the pucks, but he was playing in that time, and he wasn't overly physical, obviously. But he's one of my really good friends. He obviously works with the Flyers still. He does a great job.
What about Mike Richards?
Yeah, really tight with Richie.
Yeah.
Talk to him a lot. He's one of my best buddies. Great, just a great person, man. And even Jeff too. Like, when they left, that was tough, man.
Yep.
But you know what? It's funny how it works. Like, I was devastated, like, because I didn't think it was going to happen. And you lose those guys, and I missed them, but everything worked out so well for them. And then you bring in Wayne Simmons, Braden Shin, who I'm like so tight with now, like Jake Voracek, like just the way it kind of happens. Yeah, just the way it works out. And I mean, I honestly, I tell people when they ask me, like, who is it like a real dick? And I'm like, man, in hockey, you don't find many guys like that. If you do, I can't sit here and tell you there was a guy I was ever like, God, I hope we get rid of this guy. Like, I'm dead serious. I really don't remember a guy because, again, I guess they're maybe when they're in public, if things happen, they seem different. People don't know them, and I was lucky to be inside to know them. And that's why I was saying earlier, like, drives me nuts when I read all this negative talk. Especially when people, like, sometimes it's deserved. Hey, Sandy, you didn't play good tonight.
Sure.
Travis Sanheim, he played bad. Nolan Patrick, you had a bad game. Gee, you had a bad game. But the biggest thing is, me and JVR always laugh. It's like when people say, oh, they weren't even trying. It's like, come on, man.
They attack their character.
Yeah, and I remember we were at a soccer game, and I think me and JVR were talking about this the other day, way back when JVR's first stint in Philly. And he had to do this thing at the Union game, soccer game, and J-Roll was there, Jimmy Rollins.
Yeah.
So he was kind of talking to JVR, and he's like, well, kid, he's like, the one thing you got to learn about Philadelphia is the fans are passionate and they're awesome. But the one problem is they think they want us to win more than we want to win. And I was like, wow, like that's actually makes sense because some do. And I love the fans in Philadelphia. I do. I love them. I love
through the roof.
It's through the roof. Yes, sometimes they get a little crazy.
It's got a sharp edge.
Yeah, but I thought, wow, when he said it, I was like, wow, like that's pretty damn spot on, really.
Yeah.
I've been so fortunate, like you said. I mean, met so many people. Craig Berube is one of my best buddies. Like we literally talk. If we don't talk, we text every day.
He's awesome.
Jimmy Montgomery, who was a coach in Dallas,
Yep.
he's actually in St. Louis now. I mean, I could sit on here for an hour and go through all the guys that I'm fortunate enough to have met and stay in touch with. And I mean, it's been.
I think it's a reflection of who you are.
I've been lucky. Thank you. But I was very, very lucky.
I love that. I love that humble side of you. So let's wrap it up here. We've hit the hour. So, I guess as we sign off here, I always give people, people know who you are already, but, is there anything you want to kind of talk about? I mean, obviously you have Nasty Knuckles going, you got your business going, any kind of shout outs, anything coming in the near future, any business adventures, anything you want to tell the people who listen?
Basically, like you said, Settlemyre Skate Sharpening, and heads up for some cool stuff coming from Nasty Knuckles. This week we have Johnny Leclerc is our guest this week.
Awesome.
He's just there's another guy, like that guy treated me like gold, man. And he's just an awesome human. We have him coming up, and then we have some other things that are getting ready to be announced. I think I could say this. We're having a big ball hockey tournament this summer. And it's going to be so much fun. We've been going over all the details, and it's in a really cool area. It's like going to be music and just all kinds of stuff. So
I would love to come and check that out. Actually,
yeah, you'll have to for sure.
Flyers Nitty Gritty. We'll push it out when you guys do it. I'm happy to share that out as well.
Appreciate it.
That's super awesome.
Sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Derek, Nasty, whatever you want me to call you. Honestly,
fine, man.
So awesome for you to come on here. These stories were amazing, and I'm glad this worked out exactly like I wanted to. I really wanted to go through stuff, and I love what you said about Patty and just everything, and it's just so real and authentic. And this is the side that I want people to see of the Flyers. We get so locked into Twitter and what the reporters are saying, and I'm not a big fan of media. And ironically, like I have a small media company, but I'm not a fan of that stuff. I don't even like Twitter because I think it generates a false reality. And this is why I'm trying to do this, because I'm trying to let people see the human side behind all this stuff. So I think this was absolutely perfect. So thank you again so much for joining.
Thank you for even wanting me to come on here with you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. Absolutely. Appreciate it so much. Thank you for everybody listening. Like, subscribe, comment, do whatever you got to do. Check out all of our writings, all the other podcasts and everything. Thank you so much for everybody who listens. Thank you for reading Flyers Nitty Gritty. And remember to always level up.